One of the huge reasons why I felt compelled to start this was around the times of Black Lives Matter, seeing how something so brutal could happen made me wonder how I could help with the skills that I have.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Think Hopeful, Act Local. Today we have our July 2026 grantee, and I'm so happy to be interviewing Christopher Renfro, the creator and director of the 280 Project, a organization that's working to increase equity and diversity within the wine industry. And really, I was really drawn to this because it's so much bigger than just wine. It seems to be a real justice lens on how to broaden out what agriculture means and who's in it, and access to all sorts of economic and social justice issues. So, welcome, Christopher.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, do you want to share just a tidbit about how we got to you because it really illustrates the way that the Blue Heart model works?
Yes, I was lucky enough to meet you guys through Isaiah Powell, who is the founder of Dragon's Funk. He is a local farmer here living in San Francisco in the Bayview district. He's a very hardworking individual, creative, kind person that I am very thankful for all the time.
Yeah, and we were happy to support their work a few months ago, and he nominated you all, and our Giving Collective looked at that and said, this is a great next grantee. So everything is connected, and let's dive into our conversation. So tell us a bit about you and the work.
Yeah, so my name is Christopher Renfro. I have been living in San Francisco for around 20 years, and I've always been interested in horticulture. I've always been interested in plants, nature, food. I've worked in restaurants for a very long time. And around 2019, I was fortunate enough to gain access to a small, tiny vineyard here in San Francisco on the backside of Bernal Heights at a public park which houses a farm called Alamany Farm. So I was able to steward that in around December of 2019. And then when the pandemic came, I basically pivoted everything and then just started farming from working in a restaurant to just having lots of time to learn how to grow grapes. And I learned from mentors, people that I really respected in the wine industry before I ever got into the growing side of it, but people who I would sell their wines at restaurants that I worked at. But the work that I do, along with Rita and another friend Ray, is that we focus on bringing diversity within the wine industry. So that's through LGBTQ members, Black and Brown members, also women, and yeah, pretty much anybody marginalized. We try and offer the opportunity for them to learn as much around grape growing, viticulture, but also enology, the winemaking side, and then everything in between with business and how just there are so many different options of careers within the wine industry. And we want to highlight that there is a huge gap in how the wealth is distributed through that industry and access is given to people. And historically, a lot of these people who we are bringing in have been intentionally kept out of farming careers or working with the land or have some kind of traumatic experience historically. So, yeah, our work is just trying to fix that.
Great. Yeah, it's really cool how your story has evolved from you working in it to then wanting to create access for better experiences for others. And yeah, so tell us about really the programs. And now that we know the mission, like how do the programs work? How do you achieve your mission?
Yeah, so we start every year during bud break, which is when the grapevines come back to life and then they pop these buds and the new arms grow out of them. And basically, we start from there trying to show how every step of the way throughout the season is like a new learning experience and an opportunity to figure out where you might want to work within the wine industry. So we go to different wineries, different vineyards. We partner with UC Davis. So every Friday for 6 to 7 months, we meet and we have a cohort that's about 8 to 10 people every season. And by the end of the season, we have usually found harvest opportunities or different career opportunities And we've been trying to also take apprentices abroad. So always looking for funding to make that possible because we do believe that learning in other countries is super beneficial and something that a lot of people with privilege get to put on their resumes, but not some of these marginalized community members. And then we
Yeah.
make wine every year as well together.
And does that get sold on a small level?
We use it for more donations for fundraising and more just educating people about what the program is and why it's important for different community members to have access to winemaking facilities as long as wine mentorship.
Yeah, mentorship is so important for people's development and for having effective learning. So it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
like you guys are really embracing the power of mentorship. Do you have a story that you could share about how that has worked, maybe with one of the fellows you've seen or their experience getting to go abroad, or did how folks gotten jobs?
Yeah, totally. So I think first I would like to mention that Steve Matthias, and I'm wearing his hat right now, is one of my mentors, and he's a huge part of why 280 Projects has come to fruition. He helped get all of this started as long as Beth Forrestro at UC Davis. She's a professor in climate change and wild species grapes. But shout out to both of those people. And then also Matthew Neese, his friend who runs a winery called North American Press, and he helps us make our wine every year that we are then able to bottle. And then that can be sold through his website, North American Press. But a good story for me would be one of our first apprentices is a man named Pascal Carol, a black man from Martinique. He worked with us at 280, and then we also did some work with a gentleman named Brent Mayu, stagiaire, and he learned wine from both of us, and then eventually decided to move his entire family to France. So he now lives in the Loire Valley and is making wine. It's a pretty cool success story because that wine is now brought back into America through the largest natural wine importer in the world, Savro Vine Selections in New York. And I think about 2 days ago, I got to try one of his newest releases at Ruby Wine here in San Francisco, where I first met him through an educational class. So that's cool. We've had, yeah, a few of our cohort members go to Japan to go study from Japanese winemakers, do some pop ups on our behalf. One of our former apprentices, Akari, was a translator for that trip and was also showcasing their wines. And yeah, but we have many stories like that. I think around now we've probably had 45, 50 people that have gone through the apprenticeship that all have their own stories, whether they've gone into marketing, PR, running a wine shop, making their own wine labels, becoming vineyard managers, running cellars, all of these different types of things.
Amazing. So you started in 2019, is that right?
2020 is when the first, yeah, formulation of the apprenticeship started.
Okay. So these 45 to 50 fellows have been going through these last years.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting time to start the COVID year.
Yeah, I mean, it was also, I feel, very important to help people all get outside together and be able to be in a safe space and be around people that also feel marginalized. One of the huge reasons why I felt compelled to start this was around the times of Black Lives Matter. Ahmaud Arbery sadly was gunned down, and I think I had shared similar interests with this person that I never met, but both being black men, both being interested in real estate, running, just property, just being inquisitive people and seeing how something so brutal could happen made me wonder how I could help with the skills that I have and helping our community have, yeah, access to land, which I feel like is one of the best ways to drop stress and release trauma and learn a skill that can also take care of your community and help you sustain yourself.
Yeah, even though it's still working, it's the ability to be working outside occasionally in connection with the land, but in a good way that's not it's not oppressive work, like problematic conditions of farm work. Like you were saying, there's traumatic experiences and then there's healing experiences.
And I think it's also important to remember how much we rely on the government, and the pandemic was like a very eye-opening moment where people were forced to stop working and rely on the government to give them money for food, housing, everything. And I think similar to the Black Panther model of each one teach one and the free breakfast program, my friend Haley and I started a program like that, which kind of ran alongside with 280, where we were feeding family members and stuff, farm fresh food from Alamany. And I don't know, I think 280 was also another way to show that community organizing and collective building can be a way for us to kind of take some of our power back.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because if you look at who works in agriculture, it's most often immigrants, brown folks, black folks,
Yep.
but then you look at the like permaculture worlds and organic farming, and that can look very like white and more privileged. So it feels like you are maybe merging some of that.
And it's funny. It's like for me, I wouldn't even say it's merging, because I feel like permaculture and some of the things that you do see certain like white farming communities and people that do have privilege, I feel like they're using indigenous practices, and they're using, yeah, they all learned it from somewhere. And I don't know, but it is different to think about how forced labor, which I still feel like I see in Napa and Sonoma, is a very problematic conversation, because I think a lot of owners of these properties and estates want to feel like they're doing very good things for their people, but I come from the South, and they remind me a lot of like plantations and sharecropping and chattel slavery, and you don't see a lot of those people owning that land themselves. You don't see them kind of in charge of their own lives. They're like at the mercy of someone keeping them working if they're lucky enough, or having to go back to whatever country they're from. I also see that in Napa, they choose to use Latin labor instead of black labor, even though historically in America there were black farmers everywhere. And now it seems kind of weird how people are not chosen for certain jobs. And I see it in restaurants as well. So it's an interesting trickle down of who's being selected for what jobs. And I don't think that it's necessarily to improve people's lives. I think it's sometimes to take advantage of people.
Yeah. Two things I want to say on that is one, our grantee last month of June, we've got to connect you. It's so relevant to this conversation. There, Semillas and Manos Unidas, a brand new worker-owned collective that's forming in Napa, in that area of farm workers who want to be able to leave the wine industry and start their own land work.
Love
So
that.
I would like to connect you with them, that they're seated under North Bay Jobs with Justice.
That's amazing.
And then two, yeah, I'm wondering, how do you all address some of those racial dynamics? You were talking about Black and Brown community and maybe some competition. Do you cover some of that in your fellowship?
So I don't think it's my job to force those ideas onto people, but I think I definitely create a space where it's safe enough to talk about it if people want to. I also feel like having opportunities like this within podcasts or magazines, I try to speak about my experience and what other people's experiences are that don't usually have the chance to be able to speak publicly about this. So, yeah, I think it's very important to use every opportunity to share what it feels like to be a not privileged person. And I do have privilege even within struggling, but I don't know. It's a very interesting thing that like I feel like even within this administration, it's like a sensitive subject now, more sensitive to talk about diversity or to talk about privilege amongst certain community members. Yeah, I don't know. I try to be very outspoken within certain ways so we don't push too many people away, but also I think if you hide from what's really happening, then you're not really doing anybody a service either.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the radical act of having these conversations and refusing to be silent even when terms like DEI and have been turned into bad words.
Yeah, yeah, it's very sad, very scary.
sometimes when people hear about the wine industry, it conjures up just like, oh, that's just something for the privileged. That doesn't impact other folks in terms of like the customers and the clientele who are going to fancy restaurants or buying wine. How do you how do you like to communicate about really what your mission is and how it's not just this thing that only affects the higher echelons who are going to fancy restaurants, for example?
I think if people, because it's weird, it's like you talk about America as being a melting pot and spaces like San Francisco being so diverse or New York being diverse. And I think about how sometimes it's really not true. And if the wine industry wants to claim that it's a diverse space and that there's opportunity for everyone, we would see it. We would see it through land holding. We would see it through brands that are represented. We would see it through the jobs that are held. And I think a lot of times people with privilege will just use an excuse and be like, no one's applied, or we've tried to create access. And I think it's more than just saying it. I think it's having certain people in leadership positions within those companies, organizations. I think it's people willingly giving their land away if they have too much of it, or at least creating opportunity to maybe acquire land at some point at a reasonable level. And it's we also see it the way that the USDA has historically been like racist and not offer the same loans and grants and opportunities for black and brown farmers. And yeah, I don't know. So it's a very interesting thing. Is I think people wondering how to view the industry, and I see it as a space where it's of course black and brown people drink wine. We eat dinner. We go to nice restaurants. We enjoy things, but I don't think that they're very welcoming. And especially in a place like San Francisco, it's a very interesting thing because you see black and brown families getting kicked out of the city all the time. It gets harder and harder to live here. The industries that are leading right now are tech. You don't see a lot of black and brown people necessarily getting hired for those jobs unless they're like Southeast Asian. And so I think all of that has a huge impact on like where are people going out and eating? How are they feeling welcome? I think a lot of those restaurants love to take people's money, but they're I don't know, you don't see certain people holding jobs, so then you can't take our money. And we don't feel like we can come there if we don't see people that look like us working in those spaces, which also trickles down to who can afford to live here or how is housing distributed and all these things. So it's like you said it earlier, like all of it is connected. But yeah, I don't know. When I go out to eat, I don't see many people that look like myself. When I've been lucky enough to work in really nice restaurants, I didn't see anybody looking like myself working there. And the way that certain privileged people treat people of color working in those spaces, it's still like people are the help. And I see a lot of restaurant owners treating Latin back of house people very much similar to the way that white landholders in Napa treat their workers. It's
Yeah.
it's a transactional thing. So it's all transactional, whereas I think in a lot of POC communities, queer communities, it's more of community-based thinking and mutual aid. And all of
Yeah.
that's possible even within fine dining. I think it's totally possible. Yeah, like my friend Haley and I showed that you can do mutual aid at a fine dining level.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so like around the pandemic, also my friend Haley Garabato and I, she is an amazing Filipino chef. We grew up working together at this restaurant, Alijo, and that's where we became like best friends. And then just supported her in her journey. She supported me in my journey, and then she traveled the world to go study different restaurants. And then as I started doing the viticulture thing and farming more, that the pandemic hit, and I knew there was something that I wanted to do specifically using this outdoor farm kitchen at Alamany, which is right next to a low income neighborhood. And like I said, I've been inspired by the Black Panther Party for Peace and their lunch program, their free breakfast program. So I was like, how do we do that? Because everyone wants to use this phrase farm to table in the industry, and I don't think a lot of it's true sometimes, or it's used just as like a catchphrase to make people feel like they're closer to the land. But this farm in San Francisco has one of the best opportunities to show what a chef in a kitchen can do with a manager and someone who's tight with the community to feed people. So we would, one Sunday out of the month, feed about 250 families as much food as they would want, farm fresh meals with about 8 volunteers that would spend their time from 8 in the morning till about 2:30 in the afternoon. And we would open the kitchen up to families to come in, or we would also go in and I would personally hand deliver plates to people's doors, knocking door to door and meeting every single person in that community. We have a good friend named Nicholas Torres who allowed us to use his restaurant True Laurel here in the city for a couple of pop-ups. The first one we worked for 4 hours, we made about $9,000. We were able to use that $9,000 to feed and families for an entire year. So our feed cost was around $3 to $5 a plate. So when people say that you can't feed people for cheap, that's not true either. And I don't know. Yeah, so it's all very possible.
That is so cool. Please let us know if you're going to do any other events like that. We would love to support.
Yeah, the organization is called Feed the People. Haley's now out at a restaurant in New York called Saga. It's a 2-star Michelin restaurant with a black head chef, and so we're trying to figure out how do we collaborate out there to do something as well. My friend Steph, she runs an amazing food fridge in Harlem. It's a free food fridge. I can tag you guys with all that information. We're trying to figure out how we can work bi-coastally to take this even further and inspire more people, more chefs to do this kind of work, because you don't need somebody to tell you what to do. You just got to start it yourself.
Yeah. Let's move the conversation to learning a little bit more about maybe the back end of the organization. Like, how is it for you to run this program? What kind of resources do you need? And what do you want donors or potential donors to know?
Yeah, I would say we are like very by the bootstraps, and I pretty much say yes to everything because I'm always looking for opportunities, new doors to get in, fresh ears, so I can tell this story too. Funding is the hardest thing in the world. It's like I live in San Francisco as a struggling business owner, as someone who's trying to advocate for our community members to help them get into better positions while also trying to take care of myself. So, like I mentioned, sometimes I'll be able to get some money to pay myself. Sometimes I don't make any money doing what I do. I'm just doing this work because I know it's necessary. So, yeah, I'm always trying to figure out how to get into as many publications, do as much public speaking. It is a lot of work going for 7 months without being paid at times. But I don't know. It's also, I wouldn't really change it. But it doesn't, I don't know, with the amount of money that I see in San Francisco, we're looking at hopefully being able to bring in a budget of $15,000 a year so we can pay Rita and I both a salary, Ray a salary, to pay for our apprentices. We would love to be able to pay for a custom crush facility to be able to make wine, to get the licensing so we can legally sell the wine. So then we can like spread that story throughout the country, different places. I'm trying to figure out how to build another vineyard in New York City right now, so then we can take that up to New York because we have lots of friends who are in the industry there that are Black and brown queer people. And I think that by expanding this program, it only makes it bigger. Donors from different parts of the world, different parts of the country can all help. Rita does the project management. Ray is helping with fundraising. I'm doing a lot of the site tours, a lot of the public speaking, a lot of the face of this. I'm also documenting everything. So when you mentioned potential art project, one thing I've been doing for the last few years, or for a long time, is like documenting everything, but I want to turn it into a photo book project. Access to a better camera, access to film, a photography studio, to publish these things, so then we can hand it to donors to be able to sell it at bookstores, to showcase why agriculture is still important, why it connects with art, so many different things.
Great. Yeah, you're doing so much with so little, just like all of our grantees. And we really see and appreciate that and hold the dream for your sustainable growth.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. We've been in like the New York Times a couple of times, and I feel like there are people right ahead of us that are gonna help. It's just getting access to them and convincing them to help people do better things with funds. For me, it's not about getting rich or anything. It's about helping as many people as possible. If we were able to have a larger budget, I think instead of 8 to 10 people, it'd be amazing to have 20 people every year. It'd be amazing to, I think every time you think about one more person being able to have a new career in the wine industry and do something, it just makes the industry a little bit safer and better for everyone.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of end by asking you, what's the change you all really feel that you would be creating in the world if people invested a lot more in 280 Project?
Yeah, I think we would see more abroad travel, just so there's like knowledge exchange. I think I want people to feel more connected to the land in many different spaces and learn about other people's cultures and why it's important to end systemic racism and just to have judgment about each other when we don't really understand each other. I think it's good to eat and drink with different people so we can become friends. I want more people that do hold privilege to be open to meeting people like myself and my crew, to bring people in so then they can meet people that they might be able to help change their lives. I'm sure that we can help change their lives in a way. And I think once we start becoming like actual friends in this world, then who knows what we can do to make things better for so many different types of people. But I think it really does take a village to make the world a better place.
Super inspiring vision. Can you tell us before we end what the name means?
280 Project? Yeah, so 280 Project is basically, for a while, all the vineyards I was working on were all off the 280 freeway. And then it's right next to the projects, which is the low income neighborhood. And it's basically a project because I'm learning with the apprentices every year as well. I'm always so excited and interested every time the season starts because I just get to get better at viticulture and I get to get better at being a community leader and bringing different people together and meeting new people. So yeah, 280 Project, and you guys can find it at 280project.com online, or you can also come find me. I have a wine shop in North Beach called Friend of a Friend, 705 Columbus, and yeah, just trying to do the most with the least and inspire as many people as possible. So I thank you for your opportunity. And I'm trying to think of who I want to recommend for your next thing. I don't have to tell you now, do I?
You
Or
don't
is
have
it
to
better
tell
to
us
tell
on
you?
air.
Oh, okay, okay,
We
cool.
will contact you about that. But yeah, it's a great privilege and responsibility that you now have to pay it forward in the Blue Heart Network.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so stoked.
Thank you so much for your work and for taking the time to tell your story today with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day, okay?